Hi creative friends, welcome back to Kelly Does Stuff. Today I'm going to kick off a series of videos for a platform I have wanted to make for a very long time. I'm going to make a mountain for my Dickens Village Christmas display, and Dickens is a line by Department 56. Now if you've seen some of my videos in the past, you know I try to give the illusion, the suggestion that we've got a mountain component to my displays. I have a ridiculous amount of styrofoam, and I don't have a set set up every year because I like to switch it up a bit, which means I make myself a little bit of bananas trying to arrange all that foam. We have all the park, the pond, okay. Oh, where's the park? Oh, the farm. This is chaotic. Do we feel that you are too hot? It does feel very high. Oh, batteries. But I layer it and kind of stack it, and so you have parts of the overall display that are higher up and then the town center down here, and you would look at it and be like, oh, okay, those are the pieces that are up in the mountain. But it's not really like a mountain platform. Now, I've been collecting Dickens for about 20 years. This is my first or second year display. I had 4 Dickens pieces and a couple buildings by Big Lots. I wasn't really doing a whole lot in terms of platform and creating. And about 17 years ago, I had to go to San Francisco for a work conference, and my husband and I went out a few days early to enjoy the city and the outskirts. We went to Pier 39, we got to see the sea lions, which was such a highlight. And I went into this store. I'm not sure which store it was, unfortunately I don't remember, but they had the most gorgeous Dickens Village mountain display. It was tall, towering, and it was just beautiful. And I was in total awe. And I put that on a pedestal. That was like the ultimate, the pinnacle of villaging and platforms and creating. And I have thought about that so much and elevated it so much in my mind that I have intimidated myself out of doing it. I was like, one day I'm gonna make a mountain like that. You know, at the time when I saw it, I was really early into things, so I wasn't making stuff, but I was like, one day I will. And I haven't. And if you watched some of the videos from the past years, I've kind of talked about like, hey, I'm gonna make a mountain for this, I'm gonna do it. And then finally this year I was like, listen, I don't know what we're waiting for. Just do it. Just make this mountain. It's November. I really don't have a lot of time to be doing this. I definitely don't have a lot of time or the time to make a mountain that would fit all of the mountain pieces, the ones that I kind of like to put up there. But that's probably better because then I can just kind of focus on something smaller that would fit maybe like 8, 10 pieces. And we just got to give it a go. We're going to give it a try. So I decided I was going to do that. And then I wondered, did I take a photo of that beautiful, gorgeous mountain? So I pulled out my photo albums. Remember when we did that? We printed pictures and put them in albums. And sure enough, I have a picture of this mountain. Ta-da! It's a gorgeous display. And the photo definitely does not do it justice. But that's not what I've been picturing all these years. There's beautiful mountain backdrops in that display, but I really thought every time I thought of that mountain, I was seeing the rocky detail come forward. I was picturing like a lot of rock mountain detail throughout the whole thing. And that was intimidating to me, and that was why I didn't do it. And it didn't even exist in that particular display. So here's my rah-rah. Here's my like pep talk. You can do it. Don't be intimidated by the things that you want to make, whether it's something you saw, something that exists in your mind, go for it. I believe you can absolutely do it. And you know what? If you're intimidated, be intimidated. It's fine. Be intimidated and do it anyway. Because creating is so much more about the process than the end result. It's the fun we have along the way. You know, it's the things we learn. It's just kind of escaping inside of the creativity. And yes, of course we want it to like look a certain way at the end. But the good news is we can always like keep creating. So please go for it. If there's something you want to try, give it a go. I believe that you can do it. And I'm gonna take that advice and try to make this mountain that lives in my head, bring it to life. I'm gonna split this project up over several videos because I wanted to spend a little bit more time on each of the steps. When I'm kind of learning something or really wanting to see how somebody does something, sometimes I like to spend more time in each of those elements. So today's video, we're going to construct the mountain, we're gonna add the rock detail and plaster. Now you've seen me plaster before because you know that I love it. We're doing a little twist. I'm using a different material to make my rocks and we're gonna plaster that. So I'm just delaying because I'm nervous. Ridiculous. Okay, so here we go. Part 1, creating a Dickens Village mountain.
All right, first thing we need is some foam. I'm gonna go with EPS foam to make this mountain because I have a ton of it. I also grabbed some coolers because coolers are great for instant height. And that was as far as I got in the process before Angel came over and decided it was playtime. And I agree, we already have worked so hard. I'm going to use a thin piece of EPS foam as the base to build the mountain on. This was a scrap piece of foam that I had. You can see it still has a lot of that foil left on it, so I'm going to remove that. And then I have to position the table to match how the dining room setup is going to be. That is just how my brain works. For this mountain, I'm going to follow the setup that I normally do every single year and build out from a corner. So that platform is not flush up against the wall, it's kind of on this diagonal, and I will kind of show you the back of this in a bit here. So originally I thought I was going to use styrofoam coolers to get my height, but I thought maybe I could go ahead and start with this platform I had made in the past and build off of that. So you can see this is behind the platform here. So I have this little space, and typically what I like to do is be able to put some trees, or we might build up the mountain behind it. Now there is no formula to this, there is no one right way to do it. I spend a lot of time looking at it from different angles and kind of trying to envision the overall look that I want and how many pieces I want to be able to fit into my space. As I'm playing around with this foam, I see kind of this thin ledge right here, and I think that that could be a road, so I'm going to keep that in mind as I go. I'm using hot glue to attach all of my foam pieces together. Of course, there are lots of glue options out there, but you guys know I only have the patience for hot glue. Remember, just keep an eye on your hot glue temps, especially if working with EPS foam, so it does not eat through your foam. The first step in this process is all about creating those levels. Each of those flat areas is where a building and accessories, or multiple buildings, depending on how much space you want to give, is going to go. And this is going to look really boxy and boring, but don't worry, it gets better. The first part of the mountain is done, and I have platforms for 4 buildings, so I'm going to continue building forward and off to the side. Since I'm working with repurposed foam, I've got pieces of all different shapes and sizes, and it becomes a little bit of a puzzle trying to arrange all of this in a way that will work. If you're starting with brand new foam, you can cut to the exact size that you need, and this process should be a little bit simpler and more streamlined.
I'm thinking I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This will be accessory-ish. So that's 6, and then 7, 8. So at least, yeah, I mean the mountain itself is going to take up, we're going to do 8 buildings in an area that's quite large. So we're going to lose a lot of, space for like our buildings overall. But we are doing a mountain that I wanted to do. So I'm going to cut off these edges, and then I think we at least have like a basic thing here, basic shape, and then we'll start adding the rocky detail to make it look like a mountain, because right now it looks like just what I normally do. Levels!
Next, I want to think a little bit more about the road that I had talked about. I don't know if this will ultimately make its way all the way down the mountain, but I do want to give myself the option right now to extend it beyond that ledge. So I'm just going to cut off the front piece of the foam and maybe draw out where I think this road will go on this part of the platform. And I was looking at this platform thinking, you know, maybe we should do a cut here, kind of give this platform a little bit of a rounded front. Here we go. Let's transform this boring shape into something that looks like a mountain. And to create that rock detail, I'm going to use newspaper. This is the first time I have used newspaper, and I think it's going to give a really organic look to the shape of these rocks, and I think we're going to get a very cohesive, rocky look. I have made many different mountains, a lot for my Halloween village, a couple small ones for some different types of Christmas displays, and typically I am making that rock detail with pieces of styrofoam that I then cover in plaster. And I've liked the look of these mountains, but sometimes the overall looks like a bunch of small little rocks kind of collected together. And I want this to look like one big rocky cohesive thing, structure. And I'm thinking that the newspaper is going to help us achieve that. On this corner here, I want a bit more height, so I'm just going to give myself a higher foundation to work with, just attaching some scrap pieces of foam. That'll make it a little bit easier to get this newspaper kind of elevated in the way that I want. After putting just a few rocks in place, I decided to go back to that foam to build up a little bit more of my mountain structure so I can determine how I want those rocks to come down and forward. As I mentioned, there is no right or wrong way to do this, but there are some things you want to keep in mind as you're building your mountain, and one of those is your cords. How are you going to get them down to your outlets? For this particular platform, I don't yet know the building I'm going to place here or how I'm going to arrange it, but I am going to leave myself this little gap in my mountain. So that way I can run the cord behind right here, and then when I get all the way over to the left where that other platform is, I'm going to use a hot wire tool to trench to run my cord underneath. Once again, I'm using hot glue to attach all of my pieces of foam, and if you're wondering how much hot glue I went through in this project, it was a lot. If you decide to make a newspaper mountain with hot glue, please be so incredibly careful. This is a funky shape. It kind of changes shape a little bit as you're applying it. It's very easy to burn yourself. I got a couple really bad burns throughout this process. I recommend wearing some sort of protective glove. I fully intended to do that, but I got so excited and caught up in what I was doing that I did not want to stop to go find my glove, and I definitely paid for it. Make better choices than I did. As I'm working on adding these rocks right here, I want to make sure that I maintain the space between these two parts of the platform where I'm going to run my cord. Because even though right now the styrofoam is smooshy and I can manipulate the shape if I needed to add a cord now, once that plaster gets in place, it's going to become hard and I'm not going to be able to manipulate and smush it to get my cord down in there. Let's take a break from our rocks and work on creating the trench for the cord. This is the hot wire tool that I'm going to use. You can probably see a lot of the smoke coming off of it. This is from some styrofoam that was left on from a previous project and it is burning off. You could let that completely burn off, or you could take a rag and clean off the gunk. Just make sure you have a really good buffer between that very hot tool and your skin. I've marked off where I want to make my trench, and that's going to line up with the gap in the platform. Now you want to make sure that you've gotten the foil off of your foam and check the other side of EPS foam, because often there is a clear protective sheet. You want to peel that off as well. You could just peel it on whatever side you're carving on. This hot wire tool is by Go Change. You can get it on Amazon, and you can also check out Hot Wire Foam Factory. They have a plethora of hot wire tools, including tools that will do this sort of trenching for your cords. And I'm going to do this process a couple times so that way my trench is wide and deep enough so I don't have to worry about that cord if it doesn't want to lay completely flat. Sometimes I like to have a little twist and a bend in them, so I'm definitely going to make this trench much bigger than what I really should need. And again, with the hot glue gun, gluing all parts of this side of the platform together and then getting back to making our rock. One thing I haven't talked about yet is the size of the flat areas of the mountain where you're actually going to be placing your building. How big should you make them? Of course, we gotta have space for the building, but also think about some of the other accessories or details you want to include with each of those buildings, and it could vary. Some might have a very simple surrounding area, one or two little accessories and some trees. other buildings, you might want to have some carolers, a fountain, maybe you have some walls or a pathway, a courtyard. If you don't exactly know, I always recommend just giving yourself a little bit more room to have some of that flexibility to fit all the things you may want to. And with that in mind, I'm cutting away some foam here to make a little bit more space for a building I'm going to put here. This is already going to be a very small area. I didn't take out any of my Dickens buildings to create this mountain. I'm pretty familiar with them. I know which ones are a bit smaller that I can fit into tight spaces. I know which ones I like kind of up in the mountain and kind of how big they are. So I don't have exact buildings in mind, but I do have a good sense of how much space I need just because I've been doing this for a very long time. While I have the blade out, I decide to carve some steps or some stairs into this part of the platform. And to be honest, I don't totally love this. I also am not sure that you're gonna see this detail because it's so high up. And I think once we put the trees and the buildings in place, you're not gonna see it. So maybe it's fine that I don't like it. But anyway, here we are. Let's make some stairs. I want to add a bit of height in the back so I can add some taller mountains, and I don't have a big surface area to hot glue this, so I'm going to use some toothpicks to help secure it in place, and I'm going to use a hot wire tool, the same one I did for the trenching, to carve out a hole for my cord. All right, I got to create some more holes for my cords on each of these levels here, and it's pretty deep to reach all the way through this styrofoam. So my idea was, let me use a hot wire knife because it's really long. I can create kind of a circular motion to pull out big pieces of the foam to kind of tunnel through. Ha ha ha, no, don't do that. I'm just going to tell you right now, don't do it this way. You know that I will often show you good examples of what not to do. I'm using the hot wire knife. I then use the blade to kind of dig things out. I break the blade off inside of the styrofoam tunnel, which I knew was coming because I've done that before. I finally grabbed this trenching tool, made things go much faster, and then when I moved over to the other hole, I just used this tool for the whole thing, and it was done in maybe a minute. So grab that tool, don't mess with the other stuff, make it easy on yourself. I'm gonna start plastering. I'll link in the video description the plaster that I use. I get it on Amazon and it comes with about, I think, 10 individual rolls of plaster. And then I've got my plaster bowl of water. I never rinse that out, we'll see why in a little bit. And I like to open my rolls over that bowl because you'll see a lot of loose plaster shake out and you want to kind of collect as much of that as you can. And then you're going to cut your plaster into sheets of a size that is easy for you to work with. You might want to do a couple sizes. Sometimes it helps to have larger pieces and then some smaller ones. And when you are unrolling and cutting the plaster, you may want to wear a mask. You probably saw that there was some dust that gets stirred up. Once you are wetting the plaster and draping over it, you probably don't need the mask, but as always, do the safety research on what is right for you. And you want to spend some time making sure that you are molding and fitting that plaster around all that individual detail in the newspaper, so you're really bringing out the rock shape. If you kind of just drape it over it, of course you're going to lose it and it's not really going to look like a rock or a mountain. Now, I had mentioned that this is the first time I've use newspaper to create a mountain. And I actually tested this out many months ago before I started on this big project. I wanted to see if this was even going to work. I was afraid it was going to be a real pain to try to mold all that plaster to fit the newspaper, and I was pleasantly surprised at how quick and easy this was. It seems like it fits to the shape faster than when I'm molding it around styrofoam rocks. It kind of tends to drape on the styrofoam rocks. When I put it on the newspaper, it seems to find all those kind of folds and crevices and details pretty easily. So this was actually a pretty quick process. It took me 11 minutes to apply one roll of the plaster. Here's how far one roll got me. I do end up using a whole lot of plaster for this mountain, and you probably noticed that I will overlap the plaster just to make sure that I have thorough coverage. You're going to notice those holes in the plaster. The grid mark is going to show through a little bit, and you can just use your finger to smooth that out. You're going to kind of just thread that plaster into all of those holes, but you're probably not going to get them all. So don't worry about that. I'm going to show you an easy way to fill all that in. When you dip those plaster sheets in the bowl, some of that plaster shakes loose a bit and settles at the bottom of the bowl. This is why I don't rinse out my bowl from project to project, because you always have some left over. In between projects, it will harden, but when you add the water, it'll soften again. And you can just kind of scoop that up and smooth that over your rocks or your project, and that will fill in all of those holes. And oftentimes it is gritty. It's not super smooth, which is great because this adds some phenomenal texture to those rocks that will pop when you paint it. I am adding plaster to the back part of the platform here, which I think is pretty unnecessary because the building and the trees are going to cover that up. Apparently wasting my own time completes me. And when I drape that plaster, some of it's going to drip down onto the platform there. You can see I'm just kind of scooping that up, getting it on my fingers and smoothing that into those holes to fill them in. Here I am the next day. My plaster is not completely dry, but I've got my plaster bowl, a lot of plaster settled in the bottom, and I'm just gonna check out the mountain and see if there are any areas that I need to smooth out or fill in some holes. So this is just the reminder that you don't have to do all of this in one go. If you need to take some breaks, if you have 20 minutes, an hour to work on plaster, you can do that and come back to it later. All right, the front part of our mountain is looking pretty good with our rock detail, so now I'm gonna work on the back. I'm gonna add a bit of foam to help build up the structure and give us something to attach that newspaper rock to. And once again, I don't have a large surface area where I will be attaching these pieces of foam, so to give myself a little bit extra stability, I broke a kitchen skewer in half. The toothpicks weren't quite big enough. Sometimes you might see me cut things in a really awkward or, quite frankly, unsafe way, and I do that just for filming. It's easier, I've got the camera set up to just film right here versus move everything to cut it on a flat surface, so don't do that. Like, make safe, better choices. And this beautiful hole right here is for a cord. Yay me for remembering to do this. And I'm gonna add a bit of hot glue at the base where the two pieces of foam come together, because you can see I have a very small ledge where this is being attached. coming to the end of part 1. All we have left to do is plaster this part of the mountain, and I actually ran out of plaster. I had anticipated this and ordered some, but the shipment got delayed. So I wanted to show you this plaster I got at Michael's. I have never been successful in finding plaster at Michael's before. This was my lucky day. This was a very large roll, and I only needed one of them to cover the rest of the mountain. And there we have it. Our mountain is plastered. We need about a day to let it dry. Thank you all so much for joining me for part 1. I know this was a bit of a longer video to basically cover just 3 steps: building the structure, adding the rocks, and then adding the plaster. But I wanted to spend a little bit more time on each step so you could really see what is involved. Come back soon for part 2. We are going to be painting and adding the snow. Please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I look forward to seeing you guys next time, and happy creating!